Kick this off. Wait, you don't actually have a printed agenda this time, do we? There it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. Guys, I want to welcome you to another meeting trying to bring city, county, and state together. Plus, there are providers and there's business interests here in terms of the impact on community. So we're trying to move towards, I think, hopefully something crisp to have some takeaways from today's meeting is my hope. And I have some ideas on what we probably should talk about at some point, but for right now, I just want to say thank you for being here. Again, we have coffee and snacks across the way here. Some of the folks in this room right now have not been at these meetings before. Some of you all have been. And for those of you that are here today, let's just go around the room one more time and just kind of introduce ourselves. I do see a new face this morning to this meeting, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm talking about Dalton, actually. He's going to be city council here shortly, but let's go around the room and introduce ourselves real quickly, and then we'll get on to our agenda here. Start with Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Nick Oweisel, State Representative, 97th District, basically all of Southwest Wichita.
Thank you, Nick.
Glad to be here. Dalton Glasscock, Councilman-elect for Southwest Wichita.
Representative Clark Sanders. I'm from Saline County. I've got 10 precincts in Salina, 10 townships in the county. So good to be here.
I'm really glad you're here today, Clark. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Alex Oakley. I work in Congressman Estes' office.
Alex.
My name is Matt Miller with the United Way of the Plan.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Jim Howell, one of the county commissioners.
Brian Beatty, Sedgwick County Commissioner.
Tony Porter, representing the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Travis Rakestraw, Police Department, whole north of the Bureau.
Kelly Stain, Director of Housing and Community Services for the city.
Sandy Pickard, District 88, representative in Southeast Wichita.
Cindy Hellerton, representative, District 98 in South Wichita, North Hayesville, and a little bit of Derby.
Representative Leah Howell, District 82, which is South Derby and Mulvane.
I do see also online right now, we have currently Senator Letha Faust-Godot, County Commissioner Sarah Lopez, and City Council Member Maggie Ballard. So I'd like to recognize them. And again, if they have anything they'd like to say at any time, we sure like to hear from them as well. So just interrupt us if you have a comment or anything. Please just feel free to speak up.
Thank you,
Commissioner Beatty, do you have anything you want to say as we get started this morning?
No, I would echo just a sincere thanks. There's been a lot of conversation on this topic here in the community, which I think is helpful. I think it's healthy. And I think if we're going to change the conversation around the broader topic of homelessness, I think that we have to continue to engage these conversations at all levels: nonprofit, faith community, city government, county government, state government. Federal delegation is being represented today. This is big. Law enforcement is here. I also want to recognize that Lieutenant Moses is also here from City of Wichita Police Department. That is very helpful to have them at the table. But I appreciate this, and this is important conversations that are going to continue. So,
Commissioner, wonderful. All right. Well, with that, we're going to move down our agenda. I think we'll have some general discussion here towards the end, but let's find out where we're at. So with that, I'd like to ask Sally Stang to give us an update on the winter shelter. So
good morning, everyone. Lost tip. So we have been rallying everybody to try and get the winter shelter open as soon as possible. We're still having challenges related to having enough security guards from the security firm to be able to have 2 security guards on site 24/7. We're also a little bit challenged with transportation. There was hopes that the shelter might open Tuesday or Wednesday next week because that's when we're really seeing the weather going to turn, but it may get pushed to after the holidays. At this point, we don't have a solid date yet. And that is relative to needing to make sure that we have the security in place and all of the supplies and everything else that is necessary. You've probably seen on the news, they covered it very well, that the beds have been delivered and they're still, I know they're still being put together. And we are working closely with Humankind Ministries, who's not here today, to make sure that all the resources are together, all of the partners are at the table. And every day it's inspiring. Every day I hear of a new partner that's going to be coming on site to be able to assist and help. So we're really excited that, we have people addressing, agencies that are dedicated times that they're going to be at the shelter to help. So again, any other thoughts or resources related to transportation? We do have commitments from, Wichita Transit is going to be providing Route 28 for free. And we had a meeting with them yesterday where they're even willing to adjust the route to make sure that they're picking up and dropping at the relevant locations. But they don't operate on Sundays at all. And so that really leaves, a gap there on Sundays, as well as, people wanting to be able to get to and from, that aren't on the bus line or on the bus schedule. So, we've been doing some outreach to other organizations that may have vans that might be willing to help in that arena. Meals are still another area. There's, we have some organizations and churches that have stepped up to provide meals. We see lunches as being the biggest gap right now. So we're seeing a lot of coverage for breakfast and dinner. There is money in the budget to be able to cover meals, but the more we can get the community to come together, the better product, of course. We're working very closely with the police department and all the partners involved to ensure security. Inside and outside security cameras are in process of being installed. And then the shower issue is also a shower up is not able to bring their mobile shower unit into the facility. So we're still looking for options related to showers.
Questions?
Yeah.
Use that mic since we're on. Thanks, sir.
So if you don't mind, bring me totally up to speed. So this is an existing shelter. Where is it located? How many people does it house? When does it operate? I mean, you say you're going to try to get it open here real soon. Just explain.
Yep, I will do a quick overview. So Humankind Ministries has operated winter shelter at their location on Market Street for the past 20 years. That facility does not have the capacity or the safety in order to handle the numbers we are expecting this winter. So we've spent 5 months looking for an alternative site. And it was not very fruitful. We identified this particular location at 2220 East 21st Street North just on October 16th. And that's why it has been a whirlwind to try to get this set up so quickly. The site is a building owned by the city of Wichita, was occupied by the Fundamental Learning Center until October 31st. And with their vacating the property came to my attention. It is not an ideal location because it is so far from services. It is so far from where people are now. We understand that's why transportation is such a challenge. And so the city and the county have dedicated funds to operate the shelter to house up to 250 men and women. So just adults, no children. At this particular shelter. It will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from whichever date we can get the doors open when it's safe to do so through March 31st, 2024. But at that time, after that, the building will be sold. It is out for RFP and will not be our location for next year. So at the same time, we are trying to identify a potential site for next winter, actually, and the following winter, with hopes that our bigger plans for the multi-agency campus will come into play the following year.
And how many people does it take to operate the shelter?
They have about 40 staff members to operate because it is a 24/7 operations, but then they really rely on volunteers and community partners to come in to provide a wide array of services.
So a person can come there and literally stay 24 hours?
Yes, they can.
All right, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I want to go back to the transportation issue because this is one of my concerns when we started going into these conversations. And I talked to the council member Hoheisel about it. So Sunday's a barrier right now. And you identified another barrier of folks who are wanting to get on the line to go to
other appointments. They may have that bus line doesn't necessarily serve. That's kind of what we're seeing as a barrier.
Okay. And do we have a program that offers basically free bus cards to individuals?
I'm not aware of a dedicated project that offers free bus cards. There are a lot of programs, though, that purchase bus passes to be able to give them out.
Okay.
We run some ourselves. It's not just come on in and we're going to give you a bus pass. Those are really limited to clients that we're serving in our other programs. And I know many other programs do the same thing, purchase bus passes so that people can do that.
And do we, I guess, I understand you're not transit. Do we have a route from, let's say, the Lord's Diner to the facility?
There is a route that goes by the Lord's Diner. The Route 28 comes just within a couple blocks of Lord's Diner and can be picked up there. But they are open and are having the conversations about potentially adding additional stops. They can't eliminate, this was made very clear to us yesterday, they cannot adjust the route so that they're now eliminating an existing stop, but they can add additional stops.
Okay.
So they're still having that conversation to try and make sure we have the best coverage possible.
Okay, and I just, we're talking about lack of meals, and I'm just thinking if we could coordinate and maybe get a route from there to down to the Lord's Diner and back, that might be an option. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
I do have a quick Captain Rakestraw. Is it? Oh, go ahead, Senator. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. To that point, is it my understanding that the Lord's Diner and Open Door, they are closed on Sundays? I go down there with another group to feed the homeless on Sunday. So to Representative Hohausel's comment, so even if they went back downtown on Sunday, the Lord's Diner is closed. So how do we address that?
Yeah. And thank you, Senator, for pointing that out. I guess when I was talking about the Lord's Diner issue, it is a barrier on Sunday, like you said, but I was also referring to the other days of the week as well. But yeah, there is a lack of coverage there on Sunday. You're exactly right.
Thank you.
Hi, Sally. I have a question. So how is this information or the program, how is it being communicated to the unhoused community? So how are they being made aware of the changes to their housing situation for this winter?
So the outreach team, so there are outreach workers with both, not just the City of Wichita's homeless outreach team, which does a fabulous job, but many of the other organizations are also doing outreach. We had the Neighbor Resource Fair was held yesterday at Breakthrough Club, and that was another opportunity. And the flyers that they were handing out at that resource fair was to tell people that it was coming and it was coming in that area. Aside from the outreach workers, the case workers that are going out and they're visiting with people at the Lord's Diner at UMOD, they're having those conversations with people one-on-one.
Commissioner Vacan, and this is for anybody to answer. I don't know if Sally will have this answer. We're going to just imagine that tonight it's 13 degrees out. So we're in, I think it's code blue. Is that what it's called? The emergency. And we're going to say this is open to full capacity and it's filled. What is our gap? How many homeless folks are we still unable to get into a shelter? Again, in the cold weather emergency, it's 13 degrees tonight. So we're, all hands on deck.
So I can answer that question. As last year when we did our point in time count, there were 155 unsheltered people. At that time, Humankind had 166 in their shelter. So we're looking at about, 310, 320. Now, in my conversations with Humankind, because I brought that up about, great, this is a 250 bed shelter. What happens if you get to 251? They have assured me that they will make space, that they have cots that they can put down on the ground, as does the Union Rescue Mission have assured us that they will turn no one away.
And Humankind, though, has eliminated the possibility of using the current shelter they have for future use, right? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Captain, I'd like to go to the security issues. Could you give us a little understanding of some of those challenges of what you are doing, but also some of the gaps that Sally had mentioned? This is a really important issue for the people that live in this community and the neighborhood surrounding the winter shelter.
Yeah. So number one, the on-site security has to get solved quickly. And I know they're working very hard to try to get that solved. The police department is going to be available to, assist as far as answering 911 calls, things like that at the facility itself. But we're also encouraging our officers to have a presence in the neighborhood surrounding. We know, we've heard, we know the concerns of the neighborhood. So we're encouraging our officers when you're not on a call, if you can be in the area, that'd be great. Writing up reports in the area to be visible, to help reassure the neighborhood, and then also be there to address any issues that come up. Those are the biggest issues. We're also going to be going out and talking to some of the businesses along 21st Street, let them know, hey, we're a resource for you, how to contact us if you have concerns, something comes up, how we're going to address those issues going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Please.
I'm really happy to hear some of the stuff that you were saying, but when we go around to the houses in the area, are we also giving them information on what to do in certain situations, or who do they contact if they need someone? Or, is that information being also given to the neighbors in the?
Well, we don't have the resources to go door to door, but I do believe that there was some sort of information passed out in the neighborhoods. Is that correct?
There was a door hanger, over 2,000 in the neighborhood, but it wasn't necessarily how to reach out if you have a problem to law enforcement. It was just advising them of the project.
And we do have a very good relationship with our neighborhood associations up there, that's in that area. We have open lines of communication with them, so we would expect there's going to be a continued conversation with them.
Are there any plans to have someone go to one of their meetings or the next one?
We go to every,
this?
we go to every.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that update. I want to make a comment and then a question. The question is going to be, what additional resources can we assist you with in regards to connecting people to services? So the comment is, and it's a good news, bad news comment. I think you know where I'm heading. The comment is that the emergency winter shelter is a desperate need for a desperate situation. It's not the end all, and no shelter is the end all. The goal is to connect people to housing. Now, the city of Wichita has done a fabulous job with our housing voucher programs. Sally, how many housing vouchers? And this is the complication right now, because the goal is the people that are in the shelter, let's get them into housing. Let's not just keep them warm. Let's actually get them resources and get them into housing. The challenge, though, is what, Sally?
Every voucher we have is utilized. We do not have housing vouchers available, which is very different than the past few years. Even last year in the winter shelter, we had over 300 housing vouchers available for the clients from the shelter. And we did a great job leasing those folks up, but we still have more people in our community that are in need of assistance.
So congratulations that your department's done a fabulous job getting people connected with vouchers, but the downside is we're out of vouchers.
Correct.
So what do we do?
Well, we try to make sure that we're maximizing all the resources we have, apply for as many we got to get creative as we can to provide more rent assistance and other resources so that we can house additional people.
I think it would be a shame if I don't want to phrase this as an opportunity, but in many regards, people that are seeking shelter, and this is an opportunity to connect them to resources. Housing resources, mental health, substance use resources. This is an opportunity, and I don't want to miss that opportunity, if that makes sense. So the creativity and finding ways to do this, since we're out of vouchers, I think is a conversation we need to continue. So,
as well as if we can, the thing we haven't really talked a lot about, Cole mentioned it yesterday in a meeting, is how homeless prevention. If we can slow the number of people entering into homelessness, that would be a great situation for us, because right now it's one in and we get one into housing and two are coming into homelessness. We had a plethora of emergency rent assistance due to COVID. That's now all gone, on top of having no vouchers. So if we can slow down the number of people entering into homelessness, we're going to see great things happen.
That's right, Cole. After the representative, will you please address how we do what she just suggested after his question?
So what do you get with a housing voucher? So I get a housing voucher, then what?
So that the housing vouchers we're talking about, there's a couple of different types. The main one, though, is it's Section 8. It is rent assistance that the client can use to pay a portion of their rent to the landlord, and then they pay a portion of their income to the landlord. So it provides them the rent assistance to make a unit affordable.
Cole, how do we keep people from entering into homelessness?
So homelessness prevention is a lot of things. What it boils down to is how can we stretch people's checks farther so that they aren't cost burdened by their rent. And how you do that, you lower rent costs by building more housing or making housing that's intentionally affordable. You have food banks or low income opportunities for food. So food stamps is one way that is considered homelessness prevention. You also have the direct assistance like rent utility assistance that the city provides some. Center of Hope is a nonprofit in Wichita that provides a lot of that. Other ways, increasing wages is a big thing. So getting people to either upskill themselves or getting them into higher paying jobs or increasing pay across the board. All those are helpful. Helping handle medical costs, so getting them connected to an FQHC or helping them get connected to any benefits they may be eligible for through their job or otherwise. Anything you can do to make a person's budget stretch farther is what's extremely helpful to homelessness prevention. What I'm seeing in other communities too, that's also really, really unique, and we're doing it in a pilot way here, is homelessness eviction mediation. So when a person is about to be evicted, rather than going straight to court with their landlord and having no representation and not understanding the court process, getting a chance to sit down with their landlord. Hey, can I do a payment program? Or can we do something where I can exit this lease gracefully so that an eviction doesn't go on my record and I can go down to the next lower tier of housing, whatever that may be. So eviction prevention or homelessness prevention is a huge, huge field. And it doesn't always mean a direct check to someone. It can be in kind as well.
Sally, I have a question. How much on those vouchers? How much? Those are all funded by the city, correct?
They're fun. Well, they come through the city. They're part of the federal program from HUD.
How much does the federal government spend on that here in the city of Wichita, at least?
We're at 19 million
And
this year in voucher assistance.
Is that up from last year?
It is up from last year.
Do you off the top of your head know what last year's was?
We were at just over 18 million last year.
But last year, the 18 million, it got all the way to the end and sufficed, but this year the 19 million.
Last year, we were actually under leased. We were challenged in getting landlords to accept vouchers. In December of last year, we were actually 400 units under leased. And when the city launched a landlord incentive, used ARPA fundings to incentivize new landlords, pay lease signing bonuses, create a risk mitigation fund. And it was very successful. As of September 30th, that's when we hit fully utilized. So again, blessing and a curse. It is challenging. The only way we're going to see is if Congress ever comes up with a budget, if they adjust the amounts that we receive due to inflation, because that's what's also putting pressure on it. Rents have risen. So it's harder for, our dollars are going to fewer and fewer units. The reason I say we're not going to be issuing vouchers is because of those increased rents. In order to keep the existing people housed, we have to spend more, which means by the end of next year, we'll probably have to have shed people from the voucher program just to meet budget, unless Congress actually increases the amount that they allocate.
So the lease signing bonuses, are those city funds or are those through these same funds?
That was city ARPA funds that we used for that.
And are we going to be able to continue that program next year, or?
We'll be out of those funds by next year. We have stopped giving lease signing bonuses. We don't have any vouchers to issue or to lease up, but we're holding funds for that risk mitigation fund. So anybody who signed an incentive agreement from January 1st through September 30th, it could be eligible for damage claims. So if a client either breaks their lease or causes damages, there's still funding available to pay those claims.
Do you know how much is in that fund?
We got about $50,000 left in the fund to cover claims. We've had one claim this year.
Okay. That was going to be my next question, is how many claims. So, okay. Thank you for that information.
Yes.
And how much how much has the city allocated for ARPA funds for that bonus program?
It was $250,000
for the year.
For the year.
Okay.
So how many people are served by the 19 million currently?
3,168.
So I hear you saying that some landlords find the clientele undesirable. Like, what percentage cause problems?
Very few, to be honest with you, less than 10% of voucher. 68% of our voucher holders are elderly or disabled. The challenge is we were in such a housing market that there was such a demand for rental units that a landlord would have 6 applications. 5 of them were from the private market and 1 was subsidized. It's like, do I want to deal with your paperwork, your inspections, your rules? No, I'm going to take these 5 people that are coming from the general market. So that's part of the reason why the incentive worked, because it was like, okay, yeah, but if you take mine, you get a lease signing bonus. And if you're a new landlord, you get a new landlord bonus. And it really did help and encourage people to participate. But yes, we don't see a lot. The having one claim, and the one claim actually was not a damage claim. It was a breaking the lease early, and it was related to domestic violence. And that was the one claim we've had all year.
Yeah. One comment, and then the senator would like to chime in. But the ultimate solution to this, or one of the solutions to all this, is we need more housing units. We need more affordable, supportive housing units in this community. We are desperately low on this. So that's certainly a need, because remember, the available inventory is being served by not just the voucher program recipients, the 3,100, but also the free market. So we need more housing units. Senator, if you have a question or comment?
Yes, Commissioner Beatty, and the gentleman sitting I believe to the right of Commissioner Howell. My question is for him. When you talked about preventing homelessness or things that we can do, you mentioned food stamps, and maybe you could elaborate on that piece a little bit more. But I'm thankful that the state, county, and city are at this meeting this morning, because sometimes when the legislature, when we debate cutting food stamps from our citizens, I know a senior citizen who was getting $42 food stamps and getting her Social Security benefits, and then her Social Security benefits increased a few dollars. Therefore, her food stamp benefits from $42 went down to $19. And so, I just want us to keep that in mind when we are debating food stamps, SNAP benefits on the state level. But if you could elaborate of what you meant by that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So I am not intimately familiar with WIC, food stamps, TANF. I just know generally about those programs. Different states run them very differently. We get that leeway from the federal government. What I can say is that those dollars, when we can get them into families' hands, they stretch their budget farther, which means they don't have to go into homelessness, or they won't be as housing insecure as they may be without that added money.
And I can add on to that. I also sit on the CHIP, the Community Health Initiative Plan, I think, in the area of food access. And one of the things that we're looking at is increasing the numbers of people in low income census tracts, zip codes, their participation in the SNAP and food stamp program, because we identified that in 4 particular zip codes in our county that are very low income, there's also several people that live in those zip codes that do not receive food stamps or WIC assistance. And so just because these benefits are available does not mean that people that are low income are necessarily using them. And so we need to increase the numbers of people that are accessing those resources.
I have a follow-up question for Cole. You talked about the remediation that you did between landlords and tenants. How do people go about getting that help and that assistance? I dealt with a constituent, and it was the landlord's very quick to file that paperwork. So how does the remediation work?
So right now there's a pilot program through District 18 courts that is, I can't remember how it's being funded right now, but the entire point of that program is when someone gets an eviction notice, they're able to come into court and sit down. Now, the landlord has to choose to participate in that mediation process. There are other communities, I think Missouri, potentially Kansas City, Missouri, has instated a law that landlords must participate in landlord mediation. And there's programs, I believe there's one in Wisconsin through their Family Promise program that it's all volunteer based. So a troop of volunteers are taught eviction law and cases and how to work with people. And, whenever someone comes up with an eviction, there's a hotline they can call and they can just have a conversation about, okay, here's what's going on. How do I deal with this eviction? Most evictions in Sedgwick County, and Sally, you can correct me if this is incorrect, but most evictions are typically because of non-payment of rent, not because of another issue. And so, that's a thing to really target when we're talking about all of this is how are we helping people pay for their rent, or how is our entire system, making sure they have enough income that they can pay their rent
So is that offered in the courts right now in Sedgwick County?
through a pilot program. Yeah.
Okay.
And we know once they have an eviction on their record, that makes things more difficult getting going forward at the next place, right? Yeah. Thank you, Cole.
There was a question, Cole, and I'm going to try to move us along here because some of the things we're getting to now are further on the agenda. Not that one in particular. Cole, there was a question, Matt, from some legislators at a meeting yesterday about details on the continuum of care. If legislators want to learn more about our local continuum of care, how can they learn more? Should they just call you? Is there something that we can send them? They want details.
Yeah. So every legislator in the South Central delegation, county commissioner, and city council member did receive from me an invitation to an author talk December 8th. Homelessness is a housing problem. If you didn't see that invitation, it could have gone to spam. Let me know and I'll make sure you get it personally. At that, we're going to be having this author come talk about one of the key factors that leads to homelessness, housing. And then there'll be a brief intro to what the COC is, but I'll give one now. And you can always reach out to me if you have more questions, or Matt, who's my supervisor. Continuums of Care is a federal program. There's about 340 across the country, and their HUD's designation of this is the organizing body to end homelessness in X community. Through that, it's also a grant. So we receive about $2.8 million of that. And I would say about $2.1 million is spent every single year just housing homeless persons, either through direct rental assistance or the case management to keep them in that housing. So the rest of it is either administrative or data collection or housing navigation, or just planning and keeping the organization ticking. There are, I believe, 5 continuums of care across the state. We all work very closely together. So if you hear something from one of us, it's probably because we've all talked about it and we all are trying to preach the same thing.
Very good. Okay. Very robust conversation on number 2. Thanks for the update, Sally. Obviously, the 2 takeaways is there's still work to do on creativity on voucher program and getting people connected to resources, including mental health and substance use. So I'll follow up with you and we'll continue on that work. I'm going to go quickly through number 3 because I really want to get to number 4 and 5, which will take good conversation. I just want to let you know that there are now significant conversations, and actually, we're actually going to contract and hopefully contract with PPMC here locally to try to give us some economic data. Many of you are at the table today, and many of you that serve in this space are at the table on the back of compassion. And many of us come to this space on the back of compassion. We're compassionate about not just the people that are in being impacted by homelessness, but also the businesses, the residents that are being impacted as well. That we should be compassionate about their needs and their desires and their cares. With that is, we're only going to go so far on the back of compassion. We're going to have to start telling the economic story in this community in order to get progress made and in order to get broad community buy-in on what needs to happen here. We're going to have to tell an economic story. So we've got a pretty elaborate request to a lot of different sources about safety and perceptions, human suffering factor for children, adults, service provider stress, Sedgwick County Jail, police, fire, EMS, hospital ER visits, nonprofit stress, housing and rental pinch points. So all of these things are happening. There's been some conversation. I'm going to try to get you some data. And I thought the data was going to be a little bit more easy to compile. What I've learned is this is a significant ask. We're going to need some professional researchers to do something, but we have to have this data. If we're not going to be able to tell this story and the need, not just of the current economic cost, not just what the investment is going to cost, but the net gain to this community if we do these things. I think everybody knows that if we do nothing, the trajectory is going to get worse and the cost is going to get worse. I think that's a unanimous consensus now that doing nothing is not an option. And I'm grateful that we have a community that says, no, we need to be proactive. But we've also got to tell what the net gain is going to be economically, or we can't buy trust from our community. We shouldn't ask for their trust in investing in services if we can't quantify what the net gain is going to be. So we're working on that on this side with our partners at the city, PPMC, and others. So please, yeah.
On the data collection, I think it'd be really important as we're having that conversation as well to look at, because with Matt coming and we have like the mental health hospital coming, we have all these different things that are coming. What does that do to the area we put it in. Like, how can we make sure that the surrounding area is prepared for that, that we know what putting something like this means to that neighborhood or wherever it's at, and then how can we do best to serve them as well, and not just, I mean, we need to look at both sides of this, the people that we're serving, but also the people that are going to be impacted by that as well. So I would like to add that to the data request.
I think it's a very valuable point, something that we certainly need to be looking at. So, okay, I'm going to move us through to point number 4. And I've asked Representative Leah Howe, who is the vice chair on this subcommittee, I believe, to give us an update on the special committee conversation that took place last week.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm actually not a vice chair on this particular committee. I'm a vice chair on another one, but when we have joint committees as this is, there's always a representative and a senator that serve those 2 roles. And I didn't happen to be one of those in this case. I've kept this just really brief. I did include a lengthy article written by professional journalists that I thought did a good job. So I thought that I didn't need to reiterate everything. That I would recommend that you all read from the Topeka Capital Journal. And it was a 6+ hour meeting. We included a working lunch. And so I think we had 1 bathroom break, maybe 2. But anyway, so it was very packed. This article has a number of quotes from different legislators in particular throughout it, which kind of gives you a feel of the questions and concerns and just thoughts that the legislators were having. Just kind of over varied things. We had a number of business owners from some of the communities at this particular committee meeting. We had a lot of representatives from Lawrence and Topeka. So we kind of heard from both perspectives. We heard from city attorneys and from some city managers about some of their concerns and issues and challenges that they had. We also heard from a number of different shelters and different nonprofit organizations that talked to us about what things were doing, going well, what they still felt like some of their challenges were. I just tried to keep my notes when Ryan reminded me yesterday that he wanted me to give a report. I kind of pulled this together very quickly. So just some of my notes and thoughts from that. One of the comments made was that several different legislators kind of seconded was, just unofficially, was that there's a need for more beds throughout our state for those that have severe mental health and behavioral health issues that don't recognize the fact that they do have, a serious issue. And no one used the term, but we're really talking about involuntary commitment. And so that was one issue that was brought up. Another one that was talked about a fair amount was issues with cities and counties that are relocating their unhoused individuals, sometimes that are more challenging to deal with, to other counties and cities. And not everybody is appreciating that, obviously. And so there, in fact, I believe it was the assistant city manager from, I think, was Lawrence, actually brought up the fact that they would like to see legislation making it illegal for government entities to do such a thing, government employees to do that. And I will say I have personally been told by some government employees that they have done such a thing. So I know it does indeed exist. Yes.
So how does that happen? I mean, what do? They just pick them up and drive them to the county line, or what do they do?
that pretty much sums it up. There was even some testimony given by a business owner that they were told that, for example, they were told by someone that walked into their business establishment that had just arrived into their town, and they had gotten out of, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, the story correctly, they had gotten out of jail and were given a bus ticket to come to this town. So, and some of this, I just do want to clarify, there are many towns, for example, okay, where they're very small towns. I mean, Kansas is full of small towns. And so they either have no one that is kind of what we traditionally think of as an unhoused person, as a homeless person, and someone suddenly shows up in town that is homeless, and they have nothing set up to help this person. So I don't think all of this is necessarily with nefarious intent. It just, it presents a challenge. And so how do they get them to resources? How do they help? And I should specify that the assistant city manager did specify, requiring what is called a warm handoff when they do such a thing. So instead of just dropping them at the county line, and sometimes they're communicated in order to get compliance from the individual, they make promises about benefits and things that are not necessarily factual. So that also causes.
I would just add that this is also evidence that we have been suggesting that this is a statewide issue, that this is a transient population, and some communities are bearing a disproportionate burden. I use burden loosely, but a disproportionate burden of resources for the entire state.
And to follow up on that, a few weeks ago, I had put a request in that the next point in time count that we asked a question on where they came from. Just that we have that data, because I agree with Commissioner 100%. It's not necessarily fair for Wichita taxpayers, Sedgwick County taxpayers to take on this tax burden when these other communities are just shipping folks to Kansas. And I understand why, we have services and we're a caring community. We want to care for folks, but also these other communities kind of need to be pitching in and helping above a ham sandwich and a bus ticket. They kind of need to be pitching in as well. And that's why I agree that the state does have some role in this, because it's not necessarily fair for just Sedgwick County and Wichita taxpayers to burden all this cost.
So do you see the possibility of any legislation being offered this coming session?
Well, I think it's a little bit, you mean specifically on that topic, on that particular issue?
To prevent communities from doing that.
We didn't have enough time to actually have a roundtable discussion at the committee. So I don't know what the consensus kind of feeling was on that particular issue. I personally have asked a few different organizations their thoughts, and no one didn't really express strong opinions about that necessarily at this point. So we shall see.
And Representative, if I may, real quick, under the Kansas City's criminalized homelessness, I followed some. I was in and out of listening on that committee. I thought there was some great discussion. The proposal last year, the ban sleeping on state and local land while cutting off state funding to local governments with higher than average homelessness rates. So as we just heard, folks are being shipped into Sedgwick County into Wichita. That spikes our homelessness rate here without any fault of our own. And under that proposal, we would be penalized by being cut off from state funds because other folks are shipping their homeless people here. Was there any discussion on that aspect at all?
There was no discussion. In fact, there hasn't been any discussion on that particular bill since it was just introduced. And so, in fact, I personally have not heard any real positive feedback about that bill from anyone.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Anyway, so you're very welcome. So then there were some concerns expressed by business owners in particular that they felt that laws were being applied differently to house individuals versus unhoused individuals. And they felt like in this particular case, unhoused individuals were being given a pass on following through and implementing laws. And so there was some upset about those kinds of feelings and concerns. And just generally overall, I think, and I know I've said this before, and this is expressed today, but we need more information about, I think legislators really need a real information with data to show us the effectiveness of housing first, the continuum of care. I just know personally, I have been attending meetings for, I think, about 6 months now, and I've heard a lot of support expressed and generalizations of summaries of these, but I haven't seen data of how this really works, how we know it's effective, and how it actually saves taxpayers money in the long run. Because I mean, we do understand the concept that we're paying one way or another, but we need you to show us practically how this works. And then there was quite a bit of discussion about, or just comments about public-private partnerships with long-term community buy-in. Just a personal observation. I've just noticed throughout these months, and it was expressed again at this committee meeting, that I've just really noticed a lot of these different organizations that are very effective, that there is, peer support is a key component in that success. And by that, just for people that don't, is having volunteers or employees in these organizations who have been unhoused themselves at some point. So I find that just as a personal note of interest. We did not even get into discussing homelessness camps, those kinds of things, which are of significant issue and concern. And so I expect more things of that nature to be coming up. I do think that there is every intention to continue to have more meetings on this topic in Topeka during this session. In what format, I do not know. I did express to the chair, who's also the chair of welfare reform, which is what I vice chair, that we need to make sure that Sedgwick County was invited to the table. And I will say that this might tie into some with our meeting yesterday about the lobbyist need. They expressed they didn't know who to reach out to. And so they tried to reach out to some business owners. And I was like, well, what about Sedgwick County government? What about the city of Wichita? Okay. Yeah. We just need some
more of a unified voice.
Yes. Well, and just, legislators are busy trying to actually earn money when they're not in session. And it's hard for them to find the time to hunt people down for these things. So we need assistance in making it real easy for us.
Commissioner Beatty, I'd like to just make a couple of comments. So those are great comments. To the story that you've been handed out, just a couple of things I'd highlight here. On page 6, it talks about our homeless people being sent to Lawrence, other Kansas cities. There's some information buried in the article that kind of highlights that aspect. Again, I do think it's probably a truth. The next page on page 8 about criminalizing homelessness. There was a fascinating discussion in this meeting regarding Constitution, how it applies to this topic. There was a lot of information that I wasn't thinking about. So I was grateful to the committee discussion. I think it was educational. It made me think about some things I hadn't thought about before. So if you haven't taken time to listen to this meeting, I encourage you to please go find it. It's easy to find. It's on YouTube. If you Google state legislator, Kansas legislature, and look at the live link. It's a 6-hour meeting that happened on the 8th, which is right in the 9th, actually 8 days ago on the 9th of November. It's worth your time. It was a fascinating discussion. Lots of really good experts came together. But one thing I was frustrated, let me make one other comment. There was some discussion. If you look on the top of page 4, there's some discussion regarding the overlap between mental health, drug substance abuse, and homelessness. We all anecdotally know there's overlap. We talk about that a lot. Which one precedes which one may be interesting, but as Commissioner Beatty continues to highlight, the MAC is really the ultimate need in our community. because it deals with all three of these things and it moves them towards stability and housing. And I think that we all view this as a bigger step in that direction. I unfortunately on the first page of page 1, second sentence, I think this is probably the most key sentence of the whole article. Special Committee on Homelessness held its one and only meeting on Thursday and did not make any formal recommendations. So here's the problem. We have had a lot of discussion and we all understand a lot of things. And I'll just say locally here, this conversation has gone on a very long time. And one thing I think is different about today's meeting and the last few meetings we've had together is we've actually brought local government and state government together in the same room. During this joint committee meeting, I wasn't surprised to hear this comment, but I was also sad to hear the comment. There was, I think, several times during that meeting, several people said essentially, "This is not a state problem. This is a local problem." And I disagree. I think this is a joint problem, city and county and state. And the reality is that we're going to have a hard time solving this on our own. We need help. And that's why we're asking the state to help us. Again, someone mentioned partnerships and joint vision and unity and working together. I think that's why we're here today. I'm not the expert in the room. In fact, Commissioner, my colleagues here are much smarter on this than I am. My wife is smarter. She's been attending these meetings faithfully, and she's on that committee, the House committee that deals with some of these issues. And I can tell you where my skill set is, and I can tell you that Jason Watkins yesterday nailed it. Who was at that meeting yesterday? Let me just say what he said, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When we come together and we have these visions for a solution, if you don't come with a crisp statement, you'll never get anywhere. The legislators, as Jason said yesterday, are extremely busy. You can't look at them and say, you understand our problem. Now we just basically hand it off to you. Please go solve this problem and write this bill and solve this problem. They can't. They don't know how. They're too busy. They have too many things they're trying to do at the same time. We need to, in my personal opinion, where I'm going to focus personally, where I think this group needs to come together, is let's define what we're actually asking the state to do. That's the only way we're going to move this forward. If we continue talking about it, and again, I think we all understand the problem. We understand some ideas on how to solve this. It is going to be one of these things where I think we need to ask the state specifically for what can you do to solve this problem. And I have a couple of ideas before I even get to that, though. And I'm glad to lead some questions and discussion in just a moment if that's what we need to do here. But I've said a few things. I'd like to stop talking for just a minute and recognize others in the room. So others, please speak.
So Representative Stephen Owens dovetailed off of Jason's comments. And basically what he said is you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't get it translated into a bill, there's nothing that the legislature can really do. Now, you can do that on your own, or you can find a representative, to spearhead that effort. But you have to, for the legislature to do anything, we can't operate off of ideas. We operate off of bills. And so we need a bill proposal. And then further, as part of that process, you need to get leadership on board, as we discussed yesterday. And so we need bills, and we need, at the absolute very least, leadership to be neutral, but hopefully leadership to be positive. So there's help. I mean, I don't know how to write a bill, but I wrote one. I didn't write one, but I worked with a reviser for the first time last year. I'm relatively new. I've been up there 3 sessions now. And I worked with a reviser and explained what I wanted. And the reviser, of course, ended up writing the bill. And another, that happens a lot, and my fellow legislators know this, if there's something that's working in another state, we can create a bill off of what somebody else is doing in some other state. But the bottom line is we got to have a bill.
Yeah.
Let me just point out something I think I think this is encouraging to me. We've had all 5 county commissioners in the room and at the table. We are fully committed to helping any way we possibly can to a point. We're not going to own the entire problem. We're not going to be able to solve the entire problem within county government. That's not what we're going to do here. I don't think any commissioner thinks that's the right answer. We've had the majority of the Wichita City Council members have attended these meetings up to this point. I see that again. We have City Council member Maggie Ballard online today. We have City Council member elect Dalton Glasscock. We have had today. We have 6 legislators, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate in the room. We've had numerous legislators at the table before now, and South Central has been great, trying to help, trying to understand our perspective and our challenges, and they've been at the table. And so these are productive meetings. We are at the point right now, to your point, Representative, we're at the point right now, we need to define the concept of what we're asking for specifically. We need legislators to help us get that into a bill form. And there actually is another strategy I'd like to talk about in just a moment. There's 2 strategies, but one of them is to get this in bill form. We need champions to help us understand this. And to Representative over here's point, we probably need to get a professional lobbyist that focuses on this issue specifically to carry the water for this partnership for local government. I don't know how we do that exactly, but again, if you don't focus on this issue with earnest and with passion, it gets buried behind hundreds of bills. And so for this to become truly important, we've talked about this, I think, for most of a decade. We've had countless meetings, and there's lots of experts that have been at the table. We need to take it to the next level. And the only way to do that is to get this in a actual language form for actual consideration. And the state actually has a wonderful opportunity right now because they have some resources. They're trying to figure out what to do with those. They may do a number of different things, but while they have some options on the table, some resources, this is the opportune time. And there's actually a couple of other reasons why this is an opportune time. But again, I've probably said enough.
I want to focus this conversation, number 5, legislative opportunities, on 3, what I'm going to call the 3 stools of this chair. We're talking funding now. So how do we get this thing rolling? There's 3 stools of this chair that we need to talk about funding. One is the MAC infrastructure, the building of the multi-agency center and the entire surrounding what I would deem a campus, which includes non-congregate shelter, wraparound services in a multi-agency center, and up to 150 or 175 permanent supportive housing units. That's the entire plan. So we got to talk about that.
And a congregate shelter.
And a congregate shelter, forgive me. Yeah, congregate and non-congregate. So that's number 1, MAC infrastructure. Number 2 is housing infrastructure. We've got to talk about the entire housing infrastructure in Sedgwick County, in the state, in my opinion, barriers to access, all of those things. So that's the second conversation. And the third is services, which in many regards is the local level conversation between the city and the county and nonprofits and those things. But those are the 3 things that we got to talk about as the 3 legs of this stool. Commissioner Howe, if you'd like to talk about your idea on MAC infrastructure and what your thought is from the legislative opportunity.
Yeah, I have a conversation starter. I will do that in just a moment. I know there's a couple of hands up a moment ago, so let's get those comments out, and then we will come back to my comment.
So just a quick 2 comments. One, I do want to acknowledge Mayor-elect Wu was also at the homeless committee on homelessness meeting, which was a great thing. I was a day or 2 after the election. She made a trip up there and sat through that meeting up there. So she's going to be definitely a partner in this as well. But the onus, we're talking about a lobbyist up there from the professional side. The onus is on us at Sedgwick County. We have a great delegation down here, bipartisan delegation, but we also have the power of leadership. We have the Speaker of the House is from Wichita, the Senate President. Our pro temp is from down here in Derby. So we have a lot of power. I think the onus is on us as legislators to advocate with our leadership and within our respective caucuses. Yeah. And be that lobbyist. That we should take that on ourselves and not necessarily lean on a professional lobbyist on that. So that's just my thought on that. Okay.
And I would echo that. That's exactly what I was thinking. That's our job. We're representatives. We're here to represent our constituents, and I think we can be pretty effective at that.
Okay. It's encouraging.
Hey, real quick, Representative Sanders, MAC, what does it stand for?
Sally, go ahead.
And the multi-agency center.
This is the grand plan that we're aiming towards to help us move this conversation and get us to what we call functional zero, to where there's fewer people entering homelessness than there are coming into or more people are entering housing than entering homelessness.
And just to be clear, that idea has been developed in other communities successfully.
Right.
And it's not just a bed, it's not just a meal. It is a program that they enter. They provides, if you will, stability, counseling. We sober them. We train them, get them get documentation they need to get jobs, temporary housing, and then ultimately permanent housing. So this is a transitional facility. We have lots of community providers that come together within the MAC. So it's a public-private partnership on terms of services, but the private sector has a huge role to play. But the idea of wraparound services that come together through multiple providers is what we call the MAC. Okay, and Cole's got a question, then we have other questions. Comment.
Just two quick things. I did hear yesterday there was sort of this request that the nonprofits in this space should be doing more to lobby on behalf of ourselves. We get it's really tricky with us with our 501c3 designations about how much we can lobby versus advocate, and there's a lot of trickiness happening there. So it would be very helpful to have a state or a county and a city-led effort of lobbying, because we really struggle with that aspect. One thing that I'd like to add, maybe to a seat for your three-legged stool, Commissioner Beatty, is something that the service providers across the state have been talking about, which is reinstating Kansas's Interagency Council on Homelessness. It was established in 2005, and I don't know why it ended. I was in, I think, 5th grade at the time, but it is a super important thing to help continue the work of homelessness when all of you aren't in session. It allows all of the state staff to meet with the local staff to make sure that we're having the biggest collective impact we can with our different programming.
Oh, do you have any further information on that? If documents or anything you could email out to us.
My next meeting in 10 minutes is all about this. So yeah, I'll happily.
If you could, forward that information out. I'd love to take a look at that.
Say that again.
Reinstate. Kansas Interagency Council on Homelessness. There's a federal model for this, but looking at other states that have made progress on homelessness and making really well-developed plans to issue funding either for housing or homelessness have generally come through that body of people.
When did it end in Kansas?
I'm afraid I don't know that.
I mean, approximately?
I'm not sure. Does anyone know that?
I know that Senator's got a comment online, but Representative Howell's been waiting as well. So Senator Fausto, please speak if you have a question or comment.
Yes, I do. Two quick questions. So just for others listening, are you saying MAT or MAC for the multi facility?
It's called a multi-agency center. So it's MAC.
Okay. And then my question is, I want to know, and possibly Representative Aaliyah Howell can tell me, when will we have our South Central Legislative Delegation meeting prior to the 2024 session? And the reason I ask that is because possibly this could be a South Central Legislative Delegation bipartisan bill. However, if Representative or Commissioner Howell could tell me, exactly how much money are you asking from the state? And would that be what you requested come from the budget or special funding, other funds that the state has? Thank you.
Great questions.
And I would love to answer that in just a moment, but I would like to make sure that other comments are heard. And Senator, you're exactly right. There is going to be an ask in just a minute. This is my personal idea, just to get the conversation started. But anyway, I'd like to Representative.
Do we know when the South Central Delegation meeting will take place?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. So the South Central delegation meeting that the senator is referring to, is still in the process of being planned, but it will be the first week of January, right before we go into session. So as soon as we finalize the details on that, we will send it out to everyone. So it will be upcoming, but it will be, I believe, that week right before we go up. And then just one comment, I agree with my colleagues that we definitely need to do our part in advocating and understanding the issue and communicating it to our other members of our body. I would just also maybe like to give a very brief explanation, because I know how the legislature works is, and what our roles and our jobs look like, maybe a whole new space for some organizations and things. But, all of us have varied numbers of committees that we serve on. And some of us, like myself, I have 5, but some people have less because the committees that they are on are a heavier committee and they require a lot more work and a lot more detail. But for an individual to carry a bill and write a bill requires, it's now, it's your baby. So you are doing everything for it. You are finding people to support it. You are running around testifying in multiple other committees in both houses. You are having to leave your own committees to do that. It is a complicated thing, and it requires a lot of work. So if there is some spearheading and help with some of that, and just helping keep track of where the bill is in different places and when there's going to be committee meetings and stuff like that, those kinds of supports are very helpful.
Yeah. Well, to echo that, I love Senator's comment about making this a South Central delegation bill that you guys could run for us on behalf of this community. I think that is a fabulous idea, and whatever it takes to get us to that point, whatever support you need to get, please let us know, because that would be a fabulous statement to the state, the South Central delegation, alongside the county, the city, nonprofits, everyone in this community, that we're a unified voice. So chamber,
and Commissioner Beatty, though, that's why I'm saying, we need to know, how much funding, etc. Right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Yes.
For someone who has experienced homelessness, it's you have to make certain that those individuals are involved in this process as well, and there has to be no wrong door to get support and assistance. And as we think through what this looks like, make certain that you have representation at the table, so that you don't criminalize individuals when they are seeking support, and that we have more prevention on that side, because sometimes people will reach out before it gets to the point where they are homeless, sleeping in their car, and they are homeless, trying to figure it out, or they're couch surfing. So to make certain that you don't have to be so far down on your luck before you can qualify for a homeless or unhoused program. So really thinking through what early intervention looks like in our community. And then healthcare. There are so many people when you're going through that healthcare situation, where if you can catch them in that area, in the education area, because there are a lot of kids, a lot of families, and just some of the screenings that we can do in those areas, so we can protect the most vulnerable before they are exposed in an environment where there's more trauma, where there is mental health, because it asks which came first, mental health or drug abuse. Well, before it even got to that point, there were other signs that came up. So as we think about what this looks like, and we come up with the different bills that it's going to be multiple bills there. I don't think there's going to be one homeless bill fix, but it's going to touch different sectors, different areas, that we create a comprehensive and integrative process on how we look at homelessness and helping those that are struggling or just at the brink. Right. Because I really don't want to see us create this whole infrastructure where it continues to feed itself, because we're going to have to continue to feed it homeless people to make it work. At some point, we have to get to zero homelessness in our community. 22 years ago, when I came to Wichita, I thought it was an incredible place, because where I came from in Chicago and California, there were so many homeless people. And I see our community with more and more and more over time. So at some point, we do have to I don't know what that looks like. Like I said, I'm willing to be here at the table. And yet there are some things we have to put in place so that we're starting to prevent this problem before it gets so far where we do become one of those communities or one of those states. And it's also the federal piece. You have a federal person here. This is going to be a federal, a state, a city, a county, nonprofit, businesses, because you got business leaders here. It's going to take all of us and the everyday citizens in every community to really make certain that we help each other and serve each other, because couch surfing is a thing. At one point, we didn't put our relatives, we opened our doors for people, but it's scary now. So how do we, in our entire community, in our state, do things to help make it a more friendly, there's more love. So yes, we do have to put all these other things in place, but let's make certain we don't forget about the individuals that we are truly trying to serve and see it from their perspective as well. So there's no wrong door getting the help to get out of homelessness or preventing you from being homeless.
Thank you.
I want to amplify a little bit on that point, and it's a very good point. And what those people could bring to the table are stories. Stories are very powerful. And I heard this story 15 or 20 years ago, and it sticks with me to this day. And the local Salvation Army guy in Salina was telling about this guy who came to get food at the Salvation Army. And he said he and his wife were living in their car. And he said it wouldn't be so bad except we got 3 kids. Wow. It wouldn't be so bad except we have 3 kids. And it was the 2 of them and their 3 kids living in a car.
It's real.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to confirm a couple of details here. And again, I don't think we've actually said this publicly that I can remember. Let's get the details out. There is some money, I understand, which I have some money set aside for a MAC at this point. Does anybody know what that number is?
We've identified $61 million.
You've identified $61 million.
Mm-hmm. We haven't been granted it all. Low-income housing tax credits, new market tax credits, public housing sales, home ARP, city home ARP, state, as well as city ARPA funds.
Sounds like we're done.
Well, no, not quite. That doesn't cover the pieces where we're missing on the infrastructure side are really around the congregate shelter and the MAC itself, because most of those sources that I've talked about are very prescriptive, that they can be used for the housing component or they can be used for the supportive service component, not congregate shelter or not that the MAC center. So that's where we have.
Let me ask the question again differently. How much money is currently on the table for a MAC structure, for a facility?
So committed to this point, 21 million of that.
Can we get a breakdown of federal, state, local dollars on that? Do you know?
5.5 million in federal home ARP funds that came through the city. A commitment from the city on 4 million in ARPA funds. And then the sale of the public housing units, those proceeds should be about $13 million. HUD requires, so that's federal, that those proceeds be used for another affordable housing project, a Section 8 project. So those are the 3 sources we have confirmed.
So nothing from the state.
Nothing. Well, we have an application in for state home ARP funds for $3.5 million there. And then we have an application in for the new market tax credits and not yet for the low income housing tax credits, but we're building out that pro forma. And right now that's 29 million.
And those are through the state?
They come through. Yes, they come through. The tax credits come through the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So next question is going to be based on what you know right now, what is again, last meeting, I think I actually asked this question at once we adjourned, but I want to ask it again. What do we believe is a realistic date where this MAC is going to become reality? What's the date are we looking at?
We're hoping for 2026. And it really is dependent on the site location, whether it's demolition, build, open property build. It could happen in phases if we end up purchasing existing structures. We just don't know yet. Our team is looking at putting together some design charrettes over the next 30, 60 days to be talking about, how that structure could work, or how that, like I said, I've said from the beginning, this could be multi-story. It could be on one. That's why it's not the campus anymore. We say center because we want to leave it open, that it could be just buildings adjacent to each other. We recognize this is the hope. This is the home run swing. This is what we hope to be able to pull off. It's what we need though.
I'm sorry, what date did you say?
2026.
2026.
Let me throw some idea behind that. Now, if that's realistic, that's only about 24 months away. So the design should be being developed. The purchase should be being made right now. There should be money available to make this happen. I don't sense that those things are happening. Maybe I'm missing something here.
But we have the design team. Our developer partner includes the architect who's already working on many pieces of this. The hard part is going to be about where is it going to be located. So there has been great effort, and they've been evaluating 8 potential sites and trying to score them. And this is very, very complex, right? But we are going to have to get through the process. We're hoping to be able to identify a site by the end of the year.
How does this integrate with the mental health hospital? And what does that look like staffing wise?
It doesn't necessarily integrate with this. They're 2 separate projects for sure. There's absolutely the desire to collaborate and connect, but they're 2 separate projects.
And what does this do to staffing?
For
workforce?
For
both. If we have both, we have the mental health hospital, and then we have MAC. And I mean, we're stretched thin as it is. So what does that look like?
That is definitely a challenge, and it depends on which partners come to the table, which of their staff and resources. We do know and understand and have been working with partners in trying to develop more people in this arena, including internship programs and, Workforce Alliance, and trying to get, we've been focusing on that as the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition, groups on barriers and workforce development. Definitely going to be a challenge.
And we've been having those conversations for the hospital because, we're all seeing this is an issue for workforce. And one of the things that we're concerned with is we don't want to take people who work in other areas and put them in this, because now we're just creating another problem somewhere else and not actually solving some of this. So we're doing a lot to try to figure out what does that look like. I know there are some things at the state that could potentially help. There was things done for aviation that made it easier for people and incentivize people to go to school for aviation. I think there's a great thing that we could do similar when it comes to healthcare and behavioral healthcare in particular. I met with some people about apprenticeships recently, and I know apprenticeships are starting in the health sector, and behavioral health has not been a part of that. And I think that would be a great way if people are interested in this career, but can't afford to go back to school or can't afford those changes. That's just a really great opportunity that we can be a part of. But I think there's a lot that the state can help us with when it comes to workforce development.
If I remember yesterday at the meeting, reciprocity came up, and that's something on the state level we've done in the past few years, reciprocity on different areas. So is that something we can look at on the state level?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
okay. Really helpful.
So when we talk about infrastructure cost, I consider having a workforce ready to go day one part of like the infrastructure cost. If we can build the building, but if we don't have the workforce to staff it, then it's just a waste.
Okay, a couple of other rapid fire questions. So it sounds like, again, there's quite a bit of planning and all that has already happened, and I appreciate those good answers. But am I to assume then that Wichita is in fact the decision maker and the lead in the entire discussion of MAC?
At this point, we're willing to collaborate, and our team has been reaching out to across all entities to collaborate on it, because it is going to be complicated. There's going to be different ownership structures. It depends on who we get to the table. If we have, a federally qualified healthcare center at the table, everything complicates it more and more. And we're absolutely open to collaborating and coordinating. But at this point, we're taking the lead as well as our developer partner.
I recognize. So 2 people want to speak. Let's go with Representative Howell first, and Commissioner Lopez.
I appreciate the collaboration. I just want to understand who makes the yes or no vote on location.
Yeah, that's going to be the city at this point.
That's pretty crisp. Thank you.
So my question about that is, so when it comes to the mental health hospital, how it's being done is the county put in a request for ARPA funds. And so we're building the facility and then we're handing it to the state. And then I think they'll have a third party run it similar to the other hospitals in Kansas. But once you get the MAC built, who's going to run? I mean, is that going to be a city entity ran facility, or are you going to have like a nonprofit with nonprofits coming underneath it, like I think that's how San Antonio does it, or what's the plan to run the facility once it's here?
So it's going to be multiple facilities. Obviously, the housing piece, we expect it's going to be owned by the tax credit entity, right? And then managed by a management company. The MAC itself, where we're bringing in multiple partners to collaborate, we expect there's going to be a city employee who is the collaborator and coordinator to bring people into spaces. Each agency we've talked to have given different types of commitment. Like, yeah, we might move permanently, or we may just have office hours there 3 times a week, right? And so it is going to take having a single person who can collaborate and coordinate. And that's something they learned in the trip to New Jersey to see how Julia Orlando's site runs. It is a complicated array of agreements and MOUs and even ownership in the pieces of it, but you still have to have one person and entity that's coordinating.
Okay,
it all.
that was my question.
Yeah.
Who's that was going to be? So thank you so much.
So with that in mind, there was the recommendation by Cole was, well, I think was very good. That sounds like a legislative action item, is to reconsider that interagency center on homelessness. That was a good detail there. Some of the other things I think we ought to talk about today is, again, trying to think of what is our state partner? What role do we want them to take here? So one of the obvious questions I think we need to ask is, what are we short? What do we do? What do we not have that's going to be a barrier or a delay to moving the MAC forward? What are we short?
We are short on the infrastructure related to the congregate shelter, because most of the funding sources we've identified, that is not an eligible use for it.
And do we have an estimate what that would be?
They're saying about $20 million for the congregate shelter alone.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting number. That's a number I had on my paper for some reason.
The other piece, it is still operational funding. And I know that's definitely a challenge. And we're having conversations about, how do we address that in the long term?
I've talked to a few people at the state level, and I think that in previous meetings that we've had here, we've had an opportunity to talk about, again, the mental health hospital that we're doing right now. It is government owned, actually state owned. We're working on actually getting it constructed and in place and ready to be opened up, but it will be state owned and state operated. In this case, my vision is this is government owned. The private sector has the greatest role in operating this, and they do what they do today, but they do it in a facility that's basically provided to them. So that's a vision that I've got personally. I'm not sure that makes any sense to anybody else, but the state legislators I've spoken with, we talk about regulations, maybe this interagency center on homelessness committee or whatever it is that they do. Those are certainly some good things, but in terms of dollars, there seems to be a desire not to get involved from the state level in terms of day-to-day operations. So I think that my personal opinion is, I don't think I want to go there. I think it's we're not going to win. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about it. We're not going to get that done. I do think we have an opportunity to talk about capital investment from the state, but we can't talk about just Sedgwick County. This is not a Sedgwick County problem only. Other counties in the state, Shawnee County especially, and Douglas County, City of Lawrence, they have very similar problems. And so if the state is going to get involved, then I think we need to have a vision for a state program that would provide capital investment into these communities. But we ought to be able to apply for those funds to help us get that structure in place. That's what I'm asking for. And I can elaborate on that for just a minute, but you have some things you want to say?
No, there are some additional in the second realm of housing infrastructure. So one of the strategies we used with the studios at Humankind, the 316 hotel, that has proven to be successful. That project works because there's no debt on it. So if we can get enough money in the capital side of things, what most housing projects spend in debt service can be refocused towards operations for wraparound services and security. So there is a means to get to operational money by providing enough capital money to eliminate debt service.
Did you say earlier the city had 5.5 million? What was that for specifically?
It's home art funds. So it's, yeah.
So right now we have a need, we're short about $20 million to have this vision come to life. Okay. That to me is an interesting number. So I think there's two ways we can approach this. And I can tell you that because of the sad story regarding a little girl that was tragically murdered in Topeka, the conversation is on a lot of our minds because of that. That's the type of story that really says, what are we going to do? I think that it gives us an opportunity to say we should do something more than we're doing today. There's also some realities that there is apparently a state surplus that, again, I know that there's some debate about whether you use that for tax rate changes going forward, if you provide some type of rebate going forward. There's different ideas that are out there, but one of the things I would say is to our constituents, and we have the same constituents, right? They want these problems to be addressed somehow. And since there are resources on the table before you meddle with the surplus by changing rates and potentially doing rebate, I think we ought to be looking at, is there a need in the state for those dollars that we could simply connect the dots, take those dollars and provide it to this problem? I think there's a pretty solid ask there that I would like to see those in this room and those that haven't been at these meetings in the past, if you will, approach the governor's office and ask for a base budget addition. She will unveil her budget at the State of the State address in January. Right now, there's development happening, and she is considering changes to her base budget. And considering this surplus, I know that she's in the news right now talking about rebates, for example. This is an opportunity. This is the right time for us. Maybe it's a little bit late, actually, for those legislators that would want to, on behalf of the county, work, however we can do this, get a message to the governor's office. And the idea, I think, would be a statewide grant program that it would be available to all communities, including Sedgwick County and other places, that would be a matching program. Okay. Let them incentivize us to get our dollars on the table for this. Let them use one-time money from the state, from the surplus, to get us moving forward. And if it accelerates this solution, by the way, I think there's a strong argument for those fiscal conservatives. I think a lot of us are fiscal conservatives, but we've also talked about the return on investment. If we don't deal with this problem, someone said already today, there is a huge cost to our citizens and to our communities by not dealing with this problem. So there's an argument to be made that if we put this in place, there is a way to reduce crime, reduce adjudication costs, reduce law enforcement that has to deal with these problems in numerous other ways. It is a positive win-win for both the taxpayers as well as those getting services. So this program, I think, has legs if we simply can get it to the governor, have it added to the base budget. It's much easier than writing a bill. If we don't get that done, then we need to write a bill and have to argue it in front of committees. So again, I think it's two ways of moving forward. The best way would be to have the governor understand what we're asking for, and hopefully she would agree enough to put this in her base budget that she presents to the legislature in January.
Yes, yeah, Commissioner, sorry, Representative. Thank you. I actually agree with that proposal, especially the match. On the state, we always want to see buy-in from locals on this stuff. So the match definitely makes it more palatable. I've had conversations with the governor's office in the past few weeks on this issue. So they are aware of what's going on. Had some interesting conversations with them. Just me being the one to have to call the governor's office and loop them in. It was awkward at times. I do also want to say, I think something that we're missing is buy-in. I'm glad we have somebody from the Wichita Chamber here. Is buy-in of our business community, and perhaps they can help fill some of that gap too. I know, there was a shelter constructed in Newton, Harvey County recently, and they used a lot of private funds on it. They did a whole fundraising campaign and got private buy-in on that. So I think that's an area that we can look at too, is some sort of campaign to get buy-in from our local business community to help fill some of that gap as well.
Let me just throw out a number. We asked for $20 million, but we need $20 million to do what Sally Stang is recommended. A 60-40 split, for example, 60% from the governor's office, from the state, and 40% from local. And that can be split three ways between city, county, and private. And I think that would be just a vision to get the conversation started. Maybe that's not right, but I think if that proposal came forward, I think that's actually doable.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
Okay.
And let's continue to work together.
Representative Park, go ahead.
My perception is, and my colleagues may agree or disagree with me, at least on the Republican side of the aisle, there's no appetite for rebates. However, some kind of tax relief is is a top priority. So anything else like what you're talking about is, I think, going to have to be secondary until we figure out what kind of tax relief we're going to give the citizens of Kansas. Because I think, and again, don't be shy about disagreeing, that that's a top priority.
And so with that, again, in tax relief in terms of a rate change may have impact on future budgets. There's a concern by some folks. And that's why I think some people like the idea of a one-time rebate that kind of draws down the balance without changing necessarily the future. I see both sides. This is obviously very political. May I also recommend or just state the obvious, this is an election year for all 165. And so this is going to be pretty hot. I know they tried to pass tax relief last year, got into a veto situation and ultimately did not pass. I do agree with you. This is going to be hot. And I do know this is a priority. I do also know that the passing the budget is the only reason why they're there. Once the budget passes, it's over. And this is going to be a short session because of the election season. So we have to make an argument. I think that if we believe this is what's right for the state of Kansas, not for just South Central. Again, this is it's a vision for Shawnee County where this little girl died, right? It's a vision for other parts of the state. We need, I think, to say that not that tax relief isn't important, it is, but we have a resource today. And rather than fetter that away by handing it back and not solving a state problem, and it's expecting local government, frankly, to pick up the full weight of this, it delays this solution. And I think at the end of the day, there is some urgency that says we have some resources and we have a great need. And I think the people out there actually do support.
And I'm not suggesting that you not go forward with this. I'm just saying that I don't think it's going to be the top legislative priority. That's all I'm saying.
Our constituents do like effective and efficient government that addresses problems that they see every day. And this is one of those things where if you ask people in this community, what's the number one issue? Half of them are going to say, we have a homeless problem in downtown. And they might say we have a mental health problem. So this is on the minds of people, and they like a government that works together to begin providing a solution that makes sense. And again, this is resources available. So I think this is, if we don't ask, we will not receive anything. So I want to lean forward and if I essentially ask the governor, if she says no, then at least that's the record that she didn't want to do it. If we ask the legislature and they say no, this is an election season. I don't know if that's necessarily a good message for y'all either. So this is a great opportunity. We need to crisp up our requests, get them on paper, and get this ball rolling.
Yes.
That's why I'm here today. I want to stop talking and start doing. Okay. It's time to put pen to paper and get that message to the governor's office and get it in bill form if we have to do that as well.
And I second that. And living here, we see this on a daily basis, and it's getting worse. And we have to do something.
Amen.
Now. We have to.
And I would suggest that if 50% of the people say this is the number one problem, the other 50% would say property taxes is the number one problem.
Right. And we're going to do both. We're going to work on both of those and make both of them a priority.
Nick, how do we do this? This max state grant match program, what's the first step of getting this in writing and collaborating to move this?
I think when you just, it would be really helpful, I think, if we have another meeting that we try to get a representative from the governor's office here, at whatever level it is. It could be an agency staff or somebody here to buy into the conversation as well with us and to understand what we're truly asking for. I think Commissioner Howe's idea is a great one. And we can, like I said, we can take $40 million, set it aside and do a matching and allow counties and locals to apply for these grants, the matching side. Because again, we're out here and we're advocating for our community, which is great because we definitely need it. But I know there are other counties as well and locals that could utilize this. So having almost a bid process and allowing the governor's office to go through and select that. But
could you advise, when does this need timing wise? I know this is middle of November. She's going to give her state of the state.
I mean, they're already, putting a budget together. I mean, this is a $17 billion budget. So they're already working on it. I would say we start next week we reach out to the governor's office and I can facilitate that again. They love when I call and ask them for favors. Early next week, we have the Thanksgiving holiday, and then we kind of right after Thanksgiving holiday, we just get back at it and see what they think of the idea and what they think the best path is for this to get it done.
Do you think we could do some kind of a joint ask with Sedgwick County legislators?
Yes.
I mean, we can all, there's other ways. I prefer just a conversation on the phone, but there are ways of sending a letter to the governor as well, an official letter to the governor with maybe all our local Sedgwick County, City of Wichita, our delegation down here, sending a letter saying, hey, this is an idea we came up with, yada, yada, in official capacity. But I mean, we've got the media here. We could just make the ask right now and make it public and put the pressure on the governor.
We kind of did.
Well, the governor or her staff are listening. Hey,
so that's one. We're going to continue this. SCAC tomorrow morning, South Central. We're going to be meeting. We're going to mention this to the representatives that are at SCAC. See if we can maybe get a joint letter there. My thing is we got to move, man. We got to move and move now. So
I agree.
And I just recognize another really good thing about this table today. This is not a Democrat Republican issue. In fact, I'd like to recognize Silas Miller. He's representative on the other side of the aisle. We have people on both sides. We agree. And Senator Fasker, she's been tremendous, a champion for a solution here in this community. Mm-hmm. And Maggie Ballard. We have people from the city as well. This no one gets the glory in this case, except for if we go to the state and y'all support a solution to look at, you all get the glory. I don't want the glory here. I want you guys to understand we need the state to help us.
It's not a political issue. It's a moral issue.
Absolutely right.
And that's at the end of the day, it's not a Republican issue, a state issue. Like you said, it's not a local problem. It's not a city problem. It's not a state problem. It's a moral societal problem that we have. And it affects us all, no matter what.
Well said. Thank you for that. That's awesome. So, I think we've got momentum. We have agreement and partnership that's really coming together on this topic. And at the end of the day, we need to get pen to paper. So getting messaging a request to the governor's office, again, if we can do bipartisan effort there might be better potentially, but having multiple voices coming together to have a joint request might be better. You can get city and county and state, both sides of the aisle together with a request for consideration. And again, if it is a base budget, by the way, it requires legislative action to take it out.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable.
Inappropriate.
So that, again, if it's in the base budget, it's so much easier than writing the bill. But then to write a bill, then you have to go and have all this work to get it added to the budget, which is usually pretty uncomfortable to add spending to the budget. So
and there's a chance I'll see the House Appropriations Chair tomorrow. And if I see him, I will bring this up to him as well.
Can I make one point? This is the approach we're going to take through the governor's budget initially for the MAC infrastructure. There's other legs to the stool.
There is.
And that is the legislative piece on the housing, all the things of the housing. This is a separate conversation we need to have, not having it today, but that's a separate.
So all housing, or most all housing runs through my committee.
Okay.
Speak of.
Wow.
So let's actually get together next week, sometime early next week, and chat on some things. We did address some affordable housing stuff last year with the RHID stuff. I don't know if the city or the county are utilizing any of that yet, but these are for 1,650 square foot or smaller homes. It incentivizes communities for the construction of these homes. These are starter homes. These are affordable homes.
So we'll carry that conversation on this.
Yeah.
One more thing I would like to have, because I didn't talk to Sally before today, so I'd like to have her give her an opportunity to go and validate that number. Make sure that you're comfortable with that number. If that's not the right number, please let us know. In terms of discussion today, I threw out some numbers. I said 60-40 split and 20 million as our goal to get there. So that would be 14 million to the state. Did that right? Maybe I'm not right. I have to do the calculation. Anyway, I think it's 14 and 6. That'd be 70-30 actually. Would be 12 and 8. 12 and 8. And so again, if those are the right numbers, I guess I'd like to have a discussion, consensus, if you will, of opinion. Are those the right numbers for us to ask for? Anything we can do to, I know this is going to be, I probably shouldn't say this, but anything we can do to shift successfully to the state, it helps us even more. So if we can do a 70-30, that might be a better way to look at this. But what should we
This
ask?
number to the state keeps going up, Jim.
I
I'm
know.
concerned
Well,
here.
how about
You're just-
90-10,
You're like, oh, they'll give us 60. Let's go for 70 now.
And so that's why we need to talk today. What's reasonable?
Let's not put a number in concrete yet. I mean, we don't really have any representatives of city council. We have Maggie online, and but we don't have any members of the city council here. So I'm not sure what they're comfortable with, what they can afford. I believe they have a budget deficit coming up in a couple of years. I'm not sure what you guys on the county are comfortable with, what you guys can afford either. So I'd be uncomfortable putting a hard number in right now without getting further input from.
Well, as we approach the governor's office, we need to have, again, something.
No, I agree.
I don't want to be squishy going there. I like to say we need 21 million and we're recommended a 65-35 split. And we'll find the 35. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever that's going to be, let's be crisp, right?
Yeah. Just 5% now. It just went
33.
up.
Okay. 67-33.
You drive a hard bargain there.
68. Okay. 68-32. All right. Thank you. Okay. Other questions, comments?
Just really quick, when we do have the meeting with the governor's office, it would be great if we could have, I think, other counties across the state represented at that meeting. And hopefully, on board with at least the general idea.
Sure. So let's invite them as well. If they can be in person or by Zoom, have them. We want to share with them our vision and see if they can, agree with us. That'd be great. Is there any? We haven't picked a date for coming together again. If I'm not sure we need to, I think we do. But would 2 or 3 weeks from now, we hopefully would have this request out by that time. But I think maybe our next meeting ought to be our joint meeting with
Friday the 1st.
With hopefully our state representative, state government's office representative, as well as maybe our other county partners. If we can make that our next meeting, that would probably be a good way to target that. I don't know what their schedules are. Obviously, we need to pick something. So what?
Friday the 1st.
Okay, Friday, December 1st would be our
target.
Okay.
And if we could address some of maybe the legislative ideas for the early prevention. I mean, I wrote down a couple of ideas, but I think that would be good too. There are some things.
Yeah.
We
Like eviction remediation.
15, did that work for everybody today? I know it's early, but again, this gets you back to your normal day a little sooner. Can we do 8:15 again? Would that be okay? Okay, so our goal next time is to hopefully have someone from the state governor's office as well as our county friends across the state that might probably have an interest in this, and we'll come together again, and hopefully we'll have that conversation a little more deeply. Commissioner, anything else? What would you like?
Very good work today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please grab a muffin on the way out, and if you have any other ideas, please reach out to us. We can bring those ideas to the table. Thank you again.